Hey there, and welcome back to my channel. Happy Valentine's Day if you celebrate Valentine's Day. I have such a fun tutorial for you guys, a paint with me tutorial for you today in lieu of Valentine's Day, and it's going to be my last Valentine's Day video of this year, and we are going to do one of my very favorite subjects, as most of you already probably know if you follow me over here on my channel or on my Instagram. I am a huge dog lover, and someone had submitted this adorable little dog for one of my giveaway contests that I run over on my Instagram. Well, anyways, this was, I think, my runner-up choice for one of my master classes, so I knew that eventually I wanted to paint this adorable little dog. And how cute is it that the photo of this dog actually had a bandana, but I am going to be painting it with some hearts instead of the actual bandana that the dog has. Anyways, this is going to be a kind of a quicker rendition of one of my pet portrait styles. I still want it to be fairly realistic, but a little bit looser, just so it's not going to take us a whole hour. I just think this would make such a cute little card. You could put your own little pun with it if you wanted. But yeah, so very, very excited to be painting this with you today. I'll be working with just kind of a variety of brushes. You really could get this painting done with one really versatile brush with a pointed round tip to it. Anywhere from like a size 6 to something smaller like a 4, even a 2. And then I do have this really tiny liner brush here that'll be really helpful if you're doing like small details, especially since this portrait or this painting is on a smaller size paper. Oh, and also please don't mind my lovely nails. I haven't gotten around to it yet because it's just been a super busy week. I am teaching a workshop, a watercolor workshop tonight. So excited for that as well. But anyways, just grab a few brushes that you have, your water and your paints. I'll be working a lot with some yellow ochres, the burnt siennas, and a brown. I have a burnt umber. Van Dyke brown is also a great brown to have, and then Payne's gray. If you have anything in your palette that just is remotely close to those colors, that is perfect for this dog today. And then I have a red that I'll use, and one color that's not included in my set is this pink. Well, it's Valentine's Day and I'm a huge pink lover, so I thought we better put a little pink inside the bandana. Let's see, anything else? I think that pretty much covers it. Oh yeah, I know I've mentioned on my channel, but Bleed Proof White. I have a fresh new bottle of that. That is one of my favorite ways to add the white details to my portraits. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm just gonna grab my size 6 pointed round brush and get that wet. My paint, some of them are wet from the tube, some of them are still dry from the last time I was using them. Since I'm right-handed, I'm gonna work on my left side here and work my way down. That is just helpful. Otherwise, you can always twist your paper. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start mixing up some of these colors. Here I have my chocolatey burnt umber color, this brown. And then I'll also be working with yellow ochres, just being careful to kind of wipe off if I have any excess colors. A lot of times I use this yellow ochre to paint like flowers and leaves, so it has a lot of green still stuck to it. You can just kind of wipe that off. And then we also want to add a little bit of the Payne's gray, and that'll help create our muted colors a little bit in the ear. So here I am just grabbing a little bit of Payne's gray. We're going to work on just the little skin part. I will add just a little hint of red, so it's going to look kind of like a peachy, or not peachy, purpley light color. And I just want the smallest amount of that. So I even dabbed my paper towel, so I have mostly water, just a little bit of paint. And I'm hoping my shadow doesn't create too much of a problem here. So here I have just kind of that purpley color that I'm just going to drop in there, and only towards the center of the dog's ear right there. If yours feels too dark like mine, just go ahead and get rid of the paint on your brush, dab your paper towel, and you can just kind of mop some of that color back up. And now that is really great so far for just some of those colors on the inside of the ear, which is kind of that skin tone, but I just want to add a little bit of warmth to that. So let's grab some red and a little bit of brown. And I'm just going to drop that in before things dry to the color that we just painted. I should also mention too, for my paper, I'm using Arches 140-pound cold press paper, which just dries beautifully and mixes on the paper really, really nicely. So highly recommend getting a nice paper if you are ready for an upgrade. So now I'll go back to this is a burnt umber. It's a little lighter than the color I normally work with, which is Van Dyke Brown, but I can always darken it up if I want it darker. This dog is kind of like a lighter gingery caramely color. Okay, I don't want too much water on my brush. So now I am just going to start to use the tip of my brush and just start to add in little hairs there. So leaving little bits of white even between my strokes is going to be really helpful to show that hair texture. And again, this is just going to be kind of a looser illustration. So I'm just blocking in some of those hairs like this. I know it doesn't look like much yet, but I will show you. Here I just picked up a little more of that same paint. There's a really dark area right here where it's shadowed and kind of coming on the side of the dog. So that's all I'll do right there. And while that is still wet, we are going to go back through and add a little bit of a darker tone to that brown. So here I have my Payne's Gray, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of that burnt umber, and it's going to give me this really beautiful chocolatey, dark chocolate color. And that's what I'll use to then drop in again right there where it'll get a little bit darker, as well as some of these hairs right here. Just a nice way to kind of show a little dynamic color mixing, blooming effect right on the paper. And I can even show some of those with very little pressure. So just using the tip of my brush kind of around this part too. I'm not going to cover it everywhere, but just a few. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that on my brush again. And now I just want to grab a little bit of the yellow, mix it even with maybe a little bit of the burnt sienna, is more of that orangey color, that orangey brown. And now one more time, I'll just use that coloring to just drop in a few more places like that. And then now I just got rid of all that paint on my brush, and I can just kind of grab a little bit of that paint and smooth it around. You could grab a little water and help to smooth it. But either way, we're just going to kind of smooth out some of those lines that we just painted. So there is our ear. So next, let's work on, I'll move this so you can kind of see a little bit better up there. So now let's work on this front part, and then we have a little ear. I should also mention, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, there is a free printable outline for this dog down below in the description of this video. So you do not need to worry about sketching. I usually provide all free printable outlines for my Paint With Me tutorials out here on my channel. So always check down below the videos in the description and you can grab access to that. You only need to sign up for the printable outline tutorial library one time. And then once you do, you'll get an email. And then that way you have access to the link to the library of all the printable outlines, and you can always, you should bookmark that link and you can revisit it anytime you want to paint something else on my channel. So here I have a very, very light amount of our burnt umber and any little bit of tannish color that you have on your palette. Very little amount of paint, mostly water. I am going to start by just painting, again, similar to how we did it with the ear. just kind of painting some lines, because I do want the white of the paper to show. And then I'll do some kind of going this way. You want to paint in the direction of how hairs appear. So again, just going to start to do some thick, some thin, but keeping it really light. Just kind of fanning it out around this dog's eye. Being a smaller portrait like this, you can't get as detailed as you would on, say, an 8x10. So don't get discouraged if it's not quite as detailed, but just use light pressure or a nice small pointed round brush. Just going to bring some of that color down again, just doing real light pressure lines and strokes. Going out, fanning out from the dog's eyes there. Can even bring some down into where the nose is nice and light right there. I love these like really fluffy dogs. They're so much fun to paint. Working our way down and around the nose, same idea. Again, I just have very little. I just grab a little bit if I can't quite make it all the way around. So as you can kind of see, I'm leaving little bits of white. And then let's do the same for the other side. This is all going to make a lot more sense once we bring in color to help show some shadows. All right. Let's first begin by doing the ear over here. And that actually has more of the brown. It kind of has like black little hairs coming out of it. So I'm just going to grab my brown and mix a little more Payne's Gray in there. That's my favorite way of creating a black color. If you don't have black in your palette, it's my preferred way actually. So here I have that color mixed up. I'll just dab my paper towel so it's not too much. And let's just start to do the same thing, creating some fun little hairs, kind of fanning out, but I won't fill in the entire ear. We'll actually go through and add a little bit of brown. And I want to do that before this black part dries, so that way it can kind of blend in a little bit. So here I have yellow and brown mixed together. It's kind of that light medium tan color. Dab my paper towel so I don't have too much on my brush. And then I'll just start to kind of paint over those lines that I just painted. Can even do some that kind of fan out again off the side of the ear. As you can see, we were able to kind of color mix, but also see the black. Alrighty, let's do some of the color building, shadow, and markings within this part of the dog's face. And I will go back through again with this brown. I think I'll mix a little bit of that darker color we just mixed up, but I don't want it to be the black, just a nice kind of medium to dark brown. And we will start to paint some lines coming from the dog's eye there. And we can even paint some coming in right there. Some coming in from the ear. This is just going to really help to break up that really light area that we just painted. And some up and around. So I'm really just using the very tip of my brush. Here we go again on this side. And if you want to cover a wider area, you just press down a little bit harder on your brush. And sometimes that's helpful if there's nice darker areas like this part right there. I might actually go back through and smooth this piece out right around this eye. A bit of a darker area there. Just going to pick up a little bit more of that color. right here where that little fluff of the nose overlaps, kind of where it's about to overlap the eye, that's set back. So that needs to be darker. Just going to paint right around that eye. Just using a combination of thick and thin. Don't worry if you don't ever mix up the same amount or the same color of paint. Being an animal, it's got so many different colors that is a-okay. Just gonna mix up a little bit more dark color there. Drop that in. Would like to actually show some more up here. And kind of coming down on the side there. Maybe some right above the nose. So this is what I have so far. I grab a little bit more of that color and just paint around this eye. It definitely needs to be set back again, like the other one. So you can already see that it's starting to look more lifelike when you add that dimension in there like that. Now what I'll do is just grab mostly water, just the slightest amount of paint. And because a lot of this area has dried, just because I haven't used a lot of water, I'm just going to do a few washes in some areas. So I'm just going to darken this area down here, kind of right between the eyes. And I'm just painting over a lot of the lines that I've already painted, as well as up here. But also trying really hard to make sure that I don't paint over every little light area. And let's add a little bit here to the side. And some. So now I have just a little bit more, maybe even a little more of that reddish gingery tint of the burnt sienna. And working my way down the side of the dog's neck. And before I get too far, it would be nice to make sure that we add a little bit more color. There is that same kind of light gray, black, light black color right here. Just a marking. So let's make sure that we get enough. I didn't grab enough. And we are going to paint those in. Mine's not fully dry in that area, which is great. It's starting to kind of blend in some areas, but also being its own standalone hair on the dry areas. You really can go as detailed as you want with this painting, but again, I'm just trying really hard to keep it looser than I normally paint, which is really hard for me. I don't know about you guys, but I get hyper focused on details, even though a lot of the times I'm like, I just really want to try a looser rendition. So here's my attempt. Here's a little bit more of that medium to light brown. Using the tip of my brush, I will just start to fan some hairs coming out and around the mouth and the nose area here. Again, you can't mess this up as long as you're kind of going out and down. And leaving this inner part around the nose lighter. And then underneath here, grabbing a little more of that same medium brown, burnt umber. And just going to start where the upper mouth hair is compared to the lower chin area. So here I have a little bit of a darker area showing the shadow. And then I will kind of bring those down. Its little mouth is black, so we'll do that very soon. Right now, let's just paint some fun little hairs, kind of outlining that area. Time for that light tan color. So here we can grab a little bit of that yellow ochre, mix it with a little bit of our medium brown color, and we can use some thick and thin lines, but we just need to make sure that we are kind of covering this area. I'm just going to use a little bit of water. I don't want too much white showing through there. I know it looks funny right now because we still need to paint the mouth, and that's what we will do next. Feel free to mop up any color if you feel like you got too dark in some areas. But now let's do its little mouth. Ideally the Payne's Gray color, and I'm just going to use that straight as is for the most part. And starting right here, painting a few little hairs, and it's okay if it bleeds into the other hair. I will just go back through with my dry brush and maybe just try and soak up some of that dark color, but it should be darker regardless underneath here where its mouth is. So again, still looking a little funny because we need to do the nose. Now, if you have a smaller brush, it would be nice. I'm going to attempt to do it with this larger brush. I think I do have a smaller brush in here. Let's see. Maybe I'll try something a little bit bigger than my fine liner brush, but something a little bit smaller than the one I was using. The nose is very small. And so I'm first going to begin by using quite a lot of the Payne's Gray paint and painting in those nostrils like this. And also painting this little line that comes down. And it's actually going to help connect into this little mouth. It's okay if you get a little bit of extra paint around the mouth. So again, it'll make more sense once that piece dries, and then I'll go back through and add in the lighter areas of the nose and fill it in. So let's let that dry and continue down. I know it's also scary too when you don't see those eyes. I tend to leave those eyes towards the end. Just my personal preference, I guess. So now let's work our way underneath. This piece is actually going to be kind of that light tan as well, lighter than this piece that we already painted. So enough water to be able to paint with it, but not too much where it's going to run all over. I'm just going to do some more lines like we have been doing. And so, yeah, this dog has some really fun, just little wavy hairs underneath its chin. So I'm just taking that light tan and just trying to show texture by doing wavy lines and leaving white in between those lines. And you can even take some water and smooth out underneath the chin. Grabbing a little bit more. Working our way on the side. Okay, so this is what I have so far on those pieces. Again, it'll get darker around here too. So that is our bandana area, but we will drop in a little bit of a darker brown. So here I have my burnt umber and just a little Payne's Gray to give that lightish medium brown here. And I'm going to just drop that in to show some shadow areas right there. And we can even bring some of that color up into the curls or the waves. Just using my brush to pull it up. Okay, let's go back and finish this nose because I know if you're like me, it's really bugging me. So time to finish that one. Switch to my smaller brush that I did the nostrils with. I'm going to work with just the Payne's Gray again. Not nearly as much paint on my brush as I did with the nostril part, but I will start to just paint a little bit of an outline on the dog's nose there and down below here. So I do want more water, pick up a little more paint, and then we will start to fill in this nose. There is trying to be a little bit of a highlight up top here. So I'll just try really hard to leave a little bit of white in the dog's nose just to show that it is shiny. A lot of the times underneath the nostrils and kind of up above here is great places to leave them, where the light source usually hits the dog's nose. Now, if you need to, go ahead and grab more of that Payne's Gray. You can always try to outline the dog's nose again to leave that darken up those nostrils. Okay, looking so much better, looking like a dog now. And if you have a little excess paint of that Payne's Gray, bring it out. Again, having a really tiny brush is really helpful, but you want to start to just bring out those little hairs that fan out from the side of the dog's nose, like this. And down into the mouth. Okay, so now to even make the eyes pop and feel better, because again, it does start to bug you after a while. Let's do the eyes, and having a smaller brush is really helpful for that as well. I am going to use Payne's Gray first to outline. Now this dog is so small that I probably won't be able to get a whole lot of detail. So here I'm just going to outline the upper half of that dog's eye, as well as down below here, and working around some of those little hairs that kind of peep over the eye there. Now let's do the same thing for the other one. Now, if you don't have Payne's Gray, just go ahead and mix up. You could use black, you could use a really dark brown. You're going to outline the outer edge of that one. And there is hair that appears over this dog's eye. Again, one of my favorite things to paint are dogs that have the hairs that appear over the eye. So you can just kind of do little lines like that. Or if you have bleed proof white, you could add it in later. Okay, now we have the outer dark lines of our dog's eye, helping us really to visualize how that's going to go. And I will switch to a little bit of a larger brush now. So let's paint in this dog's eye. I'm going to make them a really nice dark chocolatey brown color, mixing my burnt umber with my Payne's Gray. And I will try really hard to leave parts of the dog's eye white. Now, the big white spot there won't stay white. That is actually going to be the dark pupil, but it also needs to have some of the shine. So that's why I'm not painting that entire thing in. So yeah, again, still not looking super realistic yet until we get the pupil in, which I'll use with the Payne's Gray. And there's likely going to be some type of blooming effect or blending right on the paper. So don't be alarmed, but I'm just using my tiny little brush here and trying really hard, again, like I said, to leave a little bit of white of the eye. And if it blooms into that brown, I think that is just great. I don't think you need to see a specific color of divided of brown and then this black color. Such a small eye as it is. Alrighty. Too cute. And I even think I'm gonna lighten these eyes up a little bit. I will take my other brush here and I'm just going to go back through and scoop some of that up. Doesn't need to be quite that dark. It is like a little game. Sometimes I scoop up too much paint and add it back in. It's called lifting, if you're able to lift up some of the paint that has somewhat dried or is even wet on the paper. Okay, let's continue on and let's darken up the area around the eyes now with any type of brown. So medium to warm brown. That is the color I will use. I think I need to add a little more water to mine so it smooths. But we need this part darker. And then, as well as this side, right where those hairs overlap and start to go into the eye. And then we'll also continue up and around and down some of those little pieces there. We'll do that again. Kind of fanning around and down. Again, this is like so hard for me to not hyper focus in on some of the details. I think it's a really great practice. But regardless of how detailed or loose you do a painting, a pet portrait, you want to make sure that you are finding relative lights and darks throughout your painting. So what I mean by that is this area that I just painted is pretty dark and it's falling flat in some of these other areas. So I'll grab some of the paint that I was just using and I'm just going to add a little bit of that into this area right there. And I also see that same value down here around its little mouth. Just going to paint some lighter little fur lines there. Okay, I like it so far. Let's continue on. I think I might add some more details into that part of the fur. But for right now, I'll just leave it. I think it looks pretty good for trying to be a looser, as well as this part being more in the forefront. I like to create detail in this area, but this is okay if it's starting to get a little bit blended, not quite so detailed, kind of falling back behind the camera or away from the camera. So let's move on into this area. I want to use more yellow ochre mixed with this brown, just something really like a warm golden brown. And then using more pressure, even a little bit more water, I'm just going to start there. There's a little bit of a light patch here, so I'm starting on this part of the dog's leg and body and just going to work around that bandana and fan it out. So again, loose, fast, and just continuing to fan it out where that outline is. Before that dries, let's just add a little bit more interest with our burnt umber. And I'm going to add just the smallest amount of that Payne's Gray just to give myself a little bit more of a chocolatey brown color. Kind of paint it right underneath there. And also bringing it down and around the feet, but it's starting to kind of blend in the area I was just painting. Here's some of that warm brown right underneath. You just kind of want to hit a few different brown colors within that part of the dog's leg. And I love how that's blending there. Oops. Okay, working our way over here to the left side. Again, that nice light tan is going to be our base color. And then I will add in, similar to what we just did on this side. Sometimes if you can leave a little bit of white between those hair or fur marks, that's great, just to show a little more texture. Okay. That medium mixed Payne's gray and brown color, here we are to add that underneath where this light part of the fur is. Might actually bring that up into where this part of the bandana is. Kind of right underneath it. Even though this part of the fur is lighter, it's got to have some shadows still. So here's a good side-by-side looking at these two legs, and what we did was also add some of that warm brown in. So let's go ahead and do that. Otherwise, it's just not quite as interesting. So here we have our warm burnt sienna, burnt umber colors. We're just going to add those in. And depending on how fast you get to it, mine looks like it's already trying to dry. If that's the case, just grab some water and help to kind of blend and smooth it in. So cute. And I think what we'll do too is add a little grounding to this dog. So stay tuned for that. Let's just add in this little area, which is going to match really well up here underneath where this little chin area is. And that will just be our yellow ochre. And if you have a little bit of that mixed up brown and burnt or Payne's gray, that's kind of the tan color we're going for, but just mostly water, a little bit of paint. And before that dries, just grab another shade of brown just to run a few little hairs along the top and on the bottom, but you can see that it's still lighter than the rest. And if you need to, just grab a little bit of water and smooth some of those pieces in. Oh, so cute. Okay, so next let's work on the bandana, and then we can always add in more details as we see fit. So the bandana is going to be, I'm kind of making this up because the dog has a bandana, but it's not the same one that I'm going to paint. So I think what I'll do is make the bandana red, and then ideally, actually, you know what? I'm going to reverse what I just said. So I'm going to make the bandana base pink and then paint my hearts in red. Feel free to paint it whatever color you wish, really. Just have fun with this part. I think I need to put some of this down on my palette here. Just put that down here. I don't use pink very often. I have been for my Valentine's Day series, so it's really fun when I can sneak it in. Otherwise, I just don't use it much with my portrait paintings. I'm just going to go straight from the tube. Such a pretty color. And start to fill it in. Working around those heart shapes. So this is going to be a little bit tricky. But the nice thing about red is that it is a darker color than pink. And so it should cover any areas of pink that maybe you get over top of the hearts. And it's also okay that we don't show as much dimension right away. We can go back through and add that in. And I tried to do the best I could with showing the outline of where a layer of the bandana is compared to other areas. So here I have, I'm just going to make this part that's closest to the dog's neck a little bit darker. I'm even having a hard time seeing it just because it's so small. But either way, you're going to give the illusion of this dog wearing a bandana. So I just painted a few little lines into the hair there that kind of makes it look like it's actually wearing it. Keeping it darker there. And then let's use a little bit, I'm just going to soak some of this up on this side. Let's use even less paint of this pink color or whatever color you're using, because the light will hit the bandana the most on this bigger chunk down here. Maybe it would be helpful if you even had a smaller brush to be working with. But if you have a nice pointed tip, you should be able to use a lot less pressure and get around in those nooks and crannies pretty well. It's almost like drawing with a I don't know, a pencil or something, or a pen. And again, we will use the red or a darker color to paint the hearts, which will ultimately look like it's actually a heart and not these blobs. Even though the white hearts are kind of cute, if you decide to do that, I would recommend having some other type of white to clean it up. In the end, I just picked up a little more of my pink. This part should be darker here. It's kind of got a little crease. And then on the outer edge, I might even use some of that extra pink paint to just kind of run it along that little edge there. And right underneath that. Again, it's loose. You can even run some along the edge at the bottom. So you get the illusion that it's wearing a bandana that's kind of tucked and folded and whatnot. Okay, so now here we have the knot of the bandana. I'm just going to help outline it just so I can see this shape better. Right there. And I'm not going to worry so much about dimension in this shape, but I will just fill it in. And it does look like there could be one more little piece to the knot right here. So I think I will make that part darker. So that makes sense. It's close and touching the dog. It should be a little darker right there. Look how pretty and vibrant. We can always add more layers too. But I think the trick to doing a more relaxed painting is to make sure that you aren't overworking the watercolor too much and not putting in too many layers. So let's move into this part. The little tie end here. There's this little chunk there. And then another little bit here. Oops. My pink is bleeding into the knot area. It might be worth mopping up that color just so it keeps the shape defined on the knot. So I'll go ahead and get rid of that paint on my brush and I'll just scoop that up. I can even scoop up a little bit here at the end so it's not one flat. Oh, I'm so in love. Okay, let's see. The pink bandana does kind of creep back behind some of these hairs that are fanning out from the dog's neck. I'll just go ahead and grab some of that pink and work around some of those little hairs. And there might have even been a little bit of hair tufts over there on the side of the dog's body that I missed. I'll let my pink bandana dry first, and then I'll go back through and just kind of clean that up on the fur. And hopefully you guys can kind of feel like you're catching up a little bit. Let's let the pink area dry, and I will go through and add in a little bit of dimension. I like to use a little bit of a softer brush. Even one bigger would be great for showing shadows. And my favorite shadow color is Payne's Gray, but any type of light blue is great. So I'm just using the slightest amount of it, kind of a little bit of like a medium to light amount of it, mostly water. But I will start, the darkest area of the shadow is right where it meets the feet. So I'll just add those little pieces in. And again, I know this looks silly, and even some right there. So now what I'll do is just get rid of the paint on my brush, kind of dab my paper towel, and now I am going to, oops, I need a little more water, pull that shadow out. And I might even go back through and add some more Payne's Gray. And so it doesn't have to be perfect. And let's just bring it up into there. But something like that just really helps to ground the dog. And again, like I said, if you want to darken Payne's Gray area around the feet, feel free to just go back through and drop that in. And that might be a little dark for the rest of the values, dark values of my painting, so I'll just pick some of that up. It's also helpful to kind of bring it into the fur area. We're kind of doing another layer right on top of the brown there. We might even want to bring some into that little area right around the feet and the fur that hangs down on the chest. Okay. Honestly, we could call this good if we wanted to. I think I'll just go through and add a few more details as well as paint my little hearts. I'm switching back to my size 6. I'm just going to grab a little bit of that tan paint. I think my dog's bandana is kind of dry enough for me to just paint a few little hairs on this side that I missed on the first go around. Might even use some of that color, just kind of like a medium to light amount on my brush of that brown. I think I want to show just a few little hair textures in this big old open space underneath the dog's chin. And really, to be honest, I would probably add a little bit more dimension. I want to make sure that this pink is fairly dry. And this is what's really helpful for creating somewhat of a realistic painting. It just needs to help make sense on where those shadows are. So here I have kind of that warm brown. I'll probably add in a little of our Payne's Gray just to make it quite so orangey. And we will paint a few little pieces that kind of come up and around where the bandana is. And I hope this helps to visualize, but that even really helps to make it look a little more realistic. And all right. If you are wanting to, now's a good time to paint those hearts. So I will try my smaller brush. All right, so here's my red. It's just straight from the tube. I'll probably just use it straight as is like this. And again, the little white hearts are so cute. So feel free to leave it like that if you wanted. But it's kind of soothing to just go back through and paint little heart shapes. Cute. Okay. Sorry if I've said cute way too much. That's just how I feel about this one, I guess. And some of these hearts are overlapped by the fabric of the dog. Or just some of the hearts I've even accidentally covered. But I did make sure to show a few like actual heart shapes, full of them, or like a full shape like this one, so that people can understand that the dog's wearing a heart-shaped bandana or patterned. Okay, making sure to not have too much water on my brush so I can really control where the paint's laying. This could take a little bit of time. If you guys paint this picture, I would love to see it. If you are willing to share it, just tag me over. If you share it on your Instagram, tag me at Windswept Design Studio. I would love to reshare it. And I know that my audience absolutely loves seeing dog paintings. So, and also a reminder that the outline is available for free down below. I also will include some of my favorite supplies linked in my Amazon shop. Let me know if you have questions on supplies down in the comments. Always happy to help provide any insight, anything that helps you feel a little more confident in your watercolor. Okay, you're getting there. Even left some white specks. Again, that's just kind of the vibe and the style of the painting that I've created. So like here's a little white space. I like that. Alrighty. And we're almost there. One more. Okay, let's see. Maybe I'll add one more back here. And I think I probably covered up one. There. Oh, oh, it's so cute. Okay. Now is a good time to always stand back from your painting and see where you could add some more. And to me, I really think that I could add a little more dimension into this dog. Even though it's a light painting, I'm trying really hard not to overwork it. I love the look of this shadow, darker hair area. I could see some kind of here and maybe even some down here. So if you're willing to stick around, I'm just going to add in a few little extra details and then I will be all done with this adorable pup. So I'm just switching back to a little bit of a bigger medium round brush. Here I have my browns. It's always good to mix a little bit of Payne's gray in there just so I get a little bit of a darker chocolatey brown. And let's start in some of the areas here around the eyes, using very little pressure there, as well as some down and around here. I don't want to go too dark. And then some here around the mouth, on this side, even some under the chin. Let's see, where else? I want to add some, I kind of like how light and bright it is over there. I think some up here. I'm just using very light pressure. Some down here. I will definitely go back through and soften some of these areas with water before it fully dries. Okay. Now with a little bit of water, not really any paint on my brush, we'll just take my brush and smooth some of those. I want to see the lines still, but I don't want it to be quite so crisp. So that's just a really nice way to help kind of smooth that in. I'm gonna add some up here. Alrighty. I think this little paint with me was really great. Great for me just because I am such a detail-oriented painter, just to paint something a little bit looser, which I think would make just such an adorable card for Valentine's Day. So again, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoy your Valentine's Day, and I cannot wait to see you all in next week's video.